When we think of tax, we think of things like tax on our income. We think tax on our company profits. But there's one important tax that we really need to get our heads around here, because it's really vitally important for when that magic day happens and you're thinking of retiring and you want to think about your state pension. And that tax, folks, is called national insurance. And in this video, I'm going to explain what national insurance actually is, the types of national insurance, why you should actually pay national insurance if you haven't quite met the criteria for it, and the impact on the state pension in the United Kingdom. And also, as a spoiler alert, why you need to act quickly to top up your national insurance record before the 5th of April 2023. Hi folks, my name is Mahmood. I'm a business finance coach and tax advisor and author of the book I Hate Numbers. And on this I Hate Numbers YouTube channel, my mission is to increase your financial awareness, help you and your business make more money, to reduce your stress and anxiety, and have the business that you so desire. What's not to love about that? Let's crack on with the video. Now let's think about national insurance first of all. Now national insurance is a tax. Like any other tax, it takes money off you from the government. Employees and the self-employed will contribute to that, as well as the employed. And it was introduced back in 1911, and it contributes towards a whole variety of things. The most important one being access to state benefits in the United Kingdom, and also the state pension. Now, there are 4 types of national insurance that you have. Type 1, and they're all classified according to, surprisingly enough, something called classes. There's a class 1, which is paid by employees, and there's a subclass that's paid by employers also. So when you take on staff, bear in mind, once their earnings go over a certain limit, then you need to pay national insurance as an employer. Your employees will also pay national insurance on their earnings as well. Now, the amounts, I'm not going to bog this video down with details in terms of rates, but check out the show notes here for a link to that detail. But as a rule of thumb here, national insurance paid by employees is 13.8%, employees pay 12%. Now, what that means is once you start paying national insurance contributions, that goes into the pot as an employee and it goes towards your state pension. More of that later on in the video. If you're self-employed or a sole trader, as you might want to call that, then you pay 2 types of national insurance, and they're called Class 2 and Class 4. Class 2 is that little fiddly one here that you pay about £3.05 per week, 158 odd pounds per year. And some people think that's quite significant. Well, that's not actually, because that's the really important one in my opinion, and that contributes towards your state pension. State pension I'm going to mention in a few moments, but think of it in this way. If you're self-employed, you pay a Class 2 if your earnings are over a certain limit, and you pay Class 4 if those figures also go over a certain level. Class 3, by the way, is that one where you can voluntarily pay your national insurance. And that's the one that we're going to be focusing on when it comes to the state pension. So that's national insurance. You've got a variety of types. Effectively, it's a tax like any other tax, and it's typically either collected from your employer. And remember, if you're running a company, if you've got a payroll scheme here registered and you're paying yourself through PAYE, you'll also be potentially paying in cash terms national insurance or getting a credit for it. Now, what's the relevance of national insurance when it comes to that state pension? Now, let's have a few headline facts about the state pension. Now, where we are in real time today, the retirement age in the United Kingdom is 66. It's planned to move that to 67. So anyone who's born after the 5th of April 1960, the retirement age moves up to 67. And also, once you go, if you're born after 1977, then the retirement age is moving up to 68. And naughty government are thinking of bringing that forward here. So that's the state retirement age. Now, let's match that against life expectancy. Now, you might think that's peculiar, but it's really important when we come on to the most crucial part of this video, is about you voluntarily paying more national insurance contributions and you actually topping up and filling in those gaps with your national insurance record as well. Carry on listening, folks, and I'll explain that in more detail in but a few moments. Now, we've got the state retirement age, and what I want to do is introduce this idea of life expectancy. Sounds quite morbid, doesn't it? But you've got to really sort of take that on board. Now, according to a variety of statistics and surveys, the average life expectancy is 80 to 82. So if you're retiring at 66 or 67, you've got typically another 14 to 16 years left in terms where you need money from somewhere, money to support your lifestyle. State pension isn't the only lifeline, the only financial source here, but it's still a valuable contribution here. The full state pension, by the way, is worth effectively £185 a week, just under £10,000 a year. The basic state pension, by the way, is going to be around about £58 a week, and that's going to be around about £2,500 a year. Now, how do we get the maximum? Because we always like to get the maximum entitlement to something. And this is where now the national insurance records will rear their head. The minimum basic you've got to have under the new rules for state pension. And bear in mind, folks, here, you probably need a degree, a lot of patience here to try and decipher the plethora and complex state legislation there is surrounding UK pension. So this is a brief framework, a brief overview. For more detail, check out the show notes, and I'll give you some links to where you can explore that in more detail. And by all means, if you wish to have a further chat about this, let us know and we can pass you on and resolve that for you. But let's crack on with where we are. Now, to get the full state pension entitlement, then you need to have what's called qualifying years of national insurance. So what that means is for 35 years, you have got to pay sufficient national insurance contributions. If you paid at least 10 years, by the way, then you get the basic state pension here. So there's quite a difference between those two. So you could be getting an annual income of about 2.5 at the basic level, up to just under 10 grand at the full state pension. And if you multiply that by the number of years after you retire, based on life expectancy, that can be quite a chunky sum. Now, it happens that many people will not be getting the full state pension. Circumstances could be they're not earning enough money in their jobs, they've been out of work, effectively their self-employed business has not quite generated, and they've not made those voluntary contributions, by the way. For all our clients that we have, we always recommend that they pay a voluntary contribution, even if their self-employed earnings aren't sufficient. So you have the option, though, of topping up your national insurance record. And you obviously have to pay to get these extra years here. But here's the thing that you've got to be really, really, really urgent on. What will happen is, after the 5th of April 2023, the government have introduced legislation that says you can only buy up to 6 years worth of national insurance years. So that means if you're getting closer and closer to retirement and you've got a big gap in your national insurance record, you're only going to be able to buy 6 years. Approximately each year will cost you £800. Now that might seem like a lot of money, but obviously what you've got to bear in mind is if you get an increase in your pension, even if it's an extra 20 quid a week, that's £1,000 over a year. So that will be a good payback for you and it will pay that money back. So if you act before 5th of April 2023, you can buy qualifying national insurance years going back even further, and you can go back to 2006. That's about 16 years that you can buy. So what do you need to do next? You might be thinking, how do I know what gaps there are? The first thing I would fully recommend that all people do is do a pensions forecast. Check the show notes for a link, click the link, and you can access your personal tax account, type in your relevant information, and it will tell you straight away what those gaps in years actually have been. So step one, do a pensions forecast, find out what the gap in your national insurance records are, and get them topped up as soon as possible. So folks, let's summarise the main bits of this video in National Insurance Explained. First of all, we've got 4 types. We've got Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and Class 4. Class 1 is typically paid by employees, and that could be directors of your own company, or you're actually working for an employer that's not your own company. You could also be an employer, and you will pay effectively employers' national insurance. As an employer, by the way, that does not count towards your state pension. It's only the individuals who make that contribution that it counts. Class 2 is paid by self-employed, and Class 4 is also paid by self-employed individuals. Class 3 is a voluntary contribution that you can make. Now, the state pension is going to be linked to the level of national insurance contributions that you've made. And if you haven't got a full record, and you can check that by doing a pensions forecast, then you have the option of buying those years, topping it up, and therefore making sure that when that time comes in the future, with your 66, 67 or 68, you will get the maximum state pension. And that will be a great bit of money coming into your coffers to help you when you slow things down when you get to that age. So folks, I hope you found this useful. Let me know what your thoughts are. Have you got a full national insurance record? Have you checked your pension forecast? If you haven't, act today. The future might seem a distant way away, but act now and don't leave it until the last moment.